Okay. Good afternoon, everybody. I am just adding Instagram here as well. So just bear with me while we talk with our wonderful expert guest. Just give me a few seconds. Okay. Okay. That will add by itself. Hello, everyone. This is Dr. Ashish, and doing live. I think we missed 2 or 3 last Fridays. So sometimes clinic gets busy and other things get busy. So we are back here with our wonderful expert for today, whom I have met in another networking group, Dr. Angela Giannoni. Right? Is that I'm pronouncing it correct?
Yes, that's correct. And thank you for having me today. It's lovely to be on and have a chit chat with you.
Yes. So it's fabulous, and we do this so that we can raise more awareness, we can educate, we can tell people what is possible for them, especially in women's health area. And I would want to know your views. So that's what we are going to talk about. And anybody who's listening right now or on replay, feel free to ask a question and then or even leave a comment. How do you see it? And today we are going to talk about gut health and overall health, general health, how that is related to gut health as well as fertility. So, Dr. Angela, I know that how we connected is one of the things that I want to talk about later. But just tell us who you are. How did you end up here? What you're doing
Okay.
right now?
Well, I'm coming live from Australia. I know you're in the UK, so I'm coming to you from down under this evening. I'm a nutritionist, or I have a nutrition background, but I decided that it would be fun to do a PhD when I had very small children. So I went back to uni to add a PhD onto my qualifications back in 2014, I think. So it was quite a long time ago now, around 10 years ago. And my supervisor at the time suggested that I look at the gut, and I was a little bit apprehensive at first because I knew that meant, playing with poo samples in the lab, and I was a bit apprehensive about that. But I embraced the challenge, and it was one of the best experiences of my life, and I've learned so much. And yeah, I think I have a as the years have gone on since my PhD, I've really developed a very sensible approach to gut health. And so I want to bring the science of the gut and how we can leverage that support of the microbiome to more people. And there's a lot of cool research in the gut area at the moment, but not a lot of people actually out there trying to help people understand it and use it in their own life.
Yeah. And how are you bridging that gap?
I've just launched actually a program, or an interactive program, and because like most of us, we sometimes get frustrated with social media, even though we're on social media right now. But I've decided to have my program running inside its own app. So I've just launched that like 2 weeks ago. It's called Gut IQ. There's a free challenge that goes along with that. But in my heart, what I want to do is empower people to control their health journey by understanding their body better. And the microbiome has the power to really steer your health in a fantastic direction if we can get it right. And I really just want more people to have that confidence that they can manage it themselves, and that they know what to do.
Yeah. So they take that assessment or like a test kind of thing, right? And then what happens then? So they're
I,
based on that.
Yeah, we do have some chat in our app around microbiome testing. I
Mm.
don't usually recommend it for people up front unless there's some issue, because it is, let's face it, it's quite expensive and not everybody can afford it, and not everybody needs to pay for, a microbiome test.
The
So we
test.
focus, yeah, so we focus on dietary strategies first. And, I have had a few clients where I have said, look, I think you would benefit from getting a test done, and then we can provide a bit more of tailored advice going forward after that.
Right.
So I'm quite practical about that. There's no need to spend money on things unless there's some grounds to do it.
Yeah. But what kind of expense we are talking about with the microbiome test that you are doing, and what is being tested?
The I don't do microbiome tests myself. My platform is an education-based program to help people build confidence. But so my program, for example, is $200, but a test to get your microbiome tested might be $400 or $500.
Right.
And they would test, and a good company, and this is where it can get very tricky because there's lots of different ways of testing the microbiome, and different labs can give you different results. So
Right.
it is important, if you are going to get a test, to get a lab which is doing what's called metagenomic sequencing, which is where they read the entire DNA sequence from all the bacteria that are in there, and they can give you more accurate results of actually what to do with that afterwards.
So you are testing what, the poo samples?
Yes, exactly. Yes, yes.
Okay. You are
And
testing.
so, yes, during my PhD, I had 90 patients in my research study, and I spent a long time in the lab extracting DNA from a lot of poo samples. So I can tell you some wonderful stories if you like, and my kids are sick of talking about it. But yeah, we have a Bristol stool chart on the fridge. We're very familiar with the whole poo conversation.
Yeah, that's totally fine because that is part of my work. And from natural and Ayurvedic medicine point of view, stools or poo is a huge part. You can
Mm.
almost tell whole health,
Yes.
of someone. How even the habits of pooping will tell you everything about whether the person is stressed out or relaxed, or, or what kind of person it is.
And that's
Because
so true.
yeah, yeah. I don't know if you're familiar, but in Ayurveda, for example, we look at poo as well. As a practitioner,
Hmm.
we will also look at poo, whether it floats, whether it sinks, the smell of it. We don't do that as much now. We ask patient to do it and just rely on their judgment.
Yeah.
But it is part of natural medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Bristol stool chart, is one thing that, Western medicine has come up with, but it is a really good marker for the health of your microbiome. And it's been very well documented in the literature that, the shape and the form of your stool samples can really predict how good your microbiome is. So yeah, it's not we need to get past the whole uncomfortable thing about talking about it, because it's such an important part of being healthy.
Oh, absolutely. And we know gut health is the starting point for every
Yeah.
single disease, you know.
Yeah.
So when we talk about microbiome, how many, just for everybody who's listening or will, you know, yeah, everybody who's listening, how many millions of bacteria, fungi, what are we talking about here? Numbers, and how many different strains do we all have?
Well, there's lots of different estimates, but the take home message is that there's more bacteria, and just bacteria. There's more bacteria in our digestive tract than we have cells in our entire body. So it puts it in perspective. And for a long time, science, or Ayurveda hasn't, but science has dismissed the role of those bacteria in promoting our health. And it's
Yeah.
really been in the last 10 years that there's just been this explosion of research, because we've suddenly just gone, aha, maybe that the microbiome is to do with that. So they're
Yeah.
just, there's over 1,000 different species that live in there. And the way we measure a healthy gut microbiome is the number of species and how well they're distributed. So if you've got a big variety of bacteria in there, then that's considered a good thing, and that's what we want. And the way we get that is to have a variety of plant foods. So we can't have a diverse microbiome if we have the same thing to eat every day and there's not much fiber in it. It's not going to promote a healthy gut environment.
Yeah. So, what kind of worst case scenario you have seen with somebody who had this strain limited to, I don't know, a few hundred, and what kind of health condition caused it?
I think I'll just kind of speak more generally because if you don't have enough fiber, so fiber only comes from plant foods. So we can't get fiber from animal products. So the more plants we have in our diet, the better. The bacteria that live in our colon, they need that fiber to survive. And if they don't have that, what they'll do is they start gobbling up whatever else they can find. And sometimes that's the mucus layer that lines our colon, which is meant to protect us from those bacteria.
Yeah.
And what happens is some of those bacteria and fragments of those bacteria end up in our bloodstream and then trigger a whole cascade of inflammation. So we don't want that. And that's what happens when we talk about things like leaky gut or, inflammatory arthritis. Those things are really key clinical markers of inflammation in that colonic environment where the bacteria haven't really been having the right amount or types of food that they need to eat.
Yeah. So it is in situations where it's Crohn's disease or leaky gut or IBS. I mean, IBS is also a huge range. You can be very mild IBS, and then you can be very severe case of IBS as well. Um, so all of those will cause, uh, you know, the the loss of microbiome as well, loss of some of good bacteria as well.
They can, and what we know from the research is that many diseases, including those inflammatory bowel diseases that you mentioned and irritable bowel, they are associated with a reduction in diversity.
Yeah.
What we don't quite understand, though, is what good diversity is meant to look like. So we
Right.
know that low diversity is not a good thing, but we also, we don't quite understand enough. And so I think the take-home message is to try and make sure you maintain your diversity. And the thing to remember is diet is the biggest driver of gut bacterial composition. So
Yeah.
if you've had antibiotics or you've had a food poisoning or something terrible, it's not a lost cause. You have way more control than you think to try and change things. It's just easier if we just do it a little bit more slowly, so it's not uncomfortable for you to change it. But
Yeah.
we do work towards shifting your diet so we've got more of those microbiome friendly foods in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Because and in your understanding, it also obviously would depend on where do you live, what kind of foods you are eating, and
Mhm.
also what is your body constitution. Body, what we say in, like in Ayurvedic medicine, we all have a different personality type. We have a body mind constitution, right? And so based on that as well, that your microbiome is different, as well as your requirement of microbiome is also different.
Yes, and we need to. That's one thing that you know, people who promote a certain diet plan or a way of eating, they don't often stop and consider that that might work for them, but it might not work for your neighbour next door because they're completely different. And I'm very big on that in my program, is that I don't promote any one sort of diet.
Yeah.
What we need to do is work with you and help you with your gut and what your preferences and your lifestyle are, and we just try and make it better. We work with what we got and we try and make it better, and that is, I think, the most
Yeah.
sensible approach, because doing extreme things is only sustainable for a very short time, and then it just promotes feeling down on yourself when you can't stick to it, which is not surprising.
No, no. And I'm similar how I approach and do it with my patients, which is all according to how it is done in Ayurvedic medicine. Is because people are thinking about, okay, shall I do keto diet, paleo diet, this diet, that
Mm.
diet, Mediterranean diet for fertility, or also that people are thinking buying this fancy stuff, or
Yeah.
manuka honey from across the world, you are shipping it to UK and thinking that's going to help you more, whereas my understanding is how you have just explained. How can you optimize your own foods that you have, uh,
Mm.
and maybe add some few things, but even simple things will make the biggest
Oh,
wonderful change, right?
and yeah, and I'm so passionate about that because we all need to, that feeling when you declutter your house and you know how relaxed and wonderful you feel once you've got rid of the clutter.
Yeah.
I really want people to feel that with their diet too. I want you to be free and feel
Mm,
that peace that you know what to do and you know that it doesn't have to be complex. You don't have to make
yeah.
some fancy meal. You can have beans on toast. That is like a fantastic meal to have because it's full of fiber, great food for your bacteria. There's
Yeah.
just no need to complicate or overcomplicate what should be a simple and intuitive way of eating.
Yeah, yeah, that's absolutely. I like simple things. I
Yeah.
don't like stuff which is too complicated. And learning about, all of this about your microbiome, and one of the things, I would be interested to know what you feel, or how maybe it is already being studied, is that based on your microbiome, if you don't do the testing, we
Hmm.
have the facility to test. Yes, we can spend $500 or pounds or whatever it is to test it as well, but what if we are not testing? Are there other ways you can still check that you are kind of in line, or you are just slightly, because I know in natural medicine we can do some of these things. So how are we doing it in modern medicine?
I think the best way to test without spending, a lot of money is one, the biggest thing is how you're feeling. Like
Mm,
when we work on our microbiome, an unexpected and quite wonderful side effect is that we might be sleeping better and we might feel more productive at work and we don't really stop and notice how bad we've been feeling with the food that we've been eating until we're feeling a bit better. So noticing those small things can be a big tick that you're doing the right thing. And
mm,
also, obviously, noticing that you're feeling more comfortable in your stomach. You don't necessarily feel bloated.
mm.
You're going to the toilet regularly. The bowel movements are easy to pass. They're of the right shape and form,
Yeah.
and you feel good afterwards, and you're not getting pain. So those are all good things that we can be pretty sure that if you have improved those things, you will have definitely improved your microbiome markers as well.
Yeah, yeah. And other thing is, how, like you mentioned, bloating and those signs. Because thing is, people don't even know what is natural and normal. You know,
Mm.
like so many people think that bloating is natural part. It is not. If your
Mm.
gut is healthy, like I don't feel bloating hardly ever. Only
No.
when I'm really out of alignment and I've eaten something and I know that it is certainly this food which is causing, or I've eaten at the wrong time. But it is also to say that people don't know what is natural and normal for them, something that is the kind of mainstream dialogue, and they think, oh, this bloating is normal, everybody gets this bloating. So
Mm.
that's also something that people have to be educated about, right?
Yeah, and I spend a bit of time with my clients actually going through some of the science about that because one of the big gaps with the way people do diets and diet plans is that they forget the bit about the why and 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 how many of us paid attention in high school when we learned about the digestive system. I just know that most people have like long forgotten that information, but unless you know what your body can do and what it should be doing, how can you know what to feed it properly because you're not really understanding what's going on the inside. So that's part of the way I empower people, is by giving them the tools, and part of those tools is knowing what's happening on the inside, so that when they're eating they can think about, oh, maybe it was that food that I ate, maybe I can try that differently next time.
Yeah.
Making those associations can really help with symptoms like that. And also, I think most people are probably just kind of chronically constipated. Most
Oh,
people are probably not going to the toilet enough, and that's contributing to a lot of bloating as well.
100%. So, what do you think is the normal number of poos a day?
Um, that's a good question, but I think we should be going to the toilet at least once a day. And for some, if you're eating a good amount of plant foods, you might be finding that you go twice a day, and that's quite normal. But
Yeah.
some people, some patients that I've had maybe only go once or every 2 or 3 days, and that's pretty much the cause of some of their bloating. They just got a bit much backlog in the system that we need to deal with.
Yeah, yeah, you're right. I because that is something that I always say as well. One is the least minimum that we should be doing, and
Mm.
also we know that constipation then leads on to so many other bowel diseases as well. Cancer being one of them, and it's not. It doesn't even have to be cancer to be uncomfortable.
Mm.
Um, there are so many other things that happen, different number of diseases that will happen because of constipation, and it's
Yes,
such a big issue that people don't even realize that how big of an issue constipation is.
and once you understand how your body's working, then you kind of can see, you can put those two and two bits together,
Yeah,
because if you've got stool sitting around in your colon for too long, all of those toxic things that aren't meant to be there, they can sit around for too long and do damage when they're not meant to.
yeah,
But also, we lose too much water out of our stool once it's been sitting in there for too long, and then the lower water content changes the way our bacteria can operate, and
yeah,
also the pH changes, so the acid level that's in the colon changes as well, and that's not a good thing either, because that can protect us from many different things. So having those tools in your toolbox to know that that's what happens from constipation really gives you the motivation and understanding not to do that, or
yeah.
just to know what's happening if it happens, and you know how to manage it when it does happen, and what to do about it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, it's such a crucial point, and also how constipation or passing regular stools is how important that is for reproductive health.
Mm.
Because it is, especially for women, it's just so closely related that we don't even realize how that is impacting even your periods. At the time of periods, if you're constipated or have chronic constipation, how that affects. What are your views, or what kind of things are being looked into related to that?
We know the microbiome can alter the amount and the circulating quantities of many of our sex hormones. So if we have, or we try and work towards having a healthier gut, then we're going to be heading back towards more optimal levels of all of those sex hormones that are meant to be and nature knows what to do. If we give it the right tools, it'll head back to where it's meant to be.
Yeah,
um, but having kind of chronic inflammation and constipation is really just a marker of the microbiome not being optimal, which means other things like, even serotonin, which is our feel good hormone, most of that comes from our gut. And so there's many other examples of some of the other sex hormones as well, which are also kind of mediated by that gut environment. So we need to nurture it and look after it.
yeah, yeah. Because I guess it is one of those things, as you mentioned in the beginning, because it is uncomfortable to talk about stools. It's not a conversation you want to have on
Mm.
the table. Same with periods, same with menstrual cycle, same with so many of gynae issues. And because we don't talk about these, and they're just kind of forgotten or we haven't given enough attention, but they are the biggest change makers for our health, or how they keep our health. Like stools is such a huge part of gut health,
Yep,
or the biggest
very
part,
much
I
so.
would say, of
Yeah,
gut health. Yeah.
it's like over 50% of what we excrete is bacteria. So, and then there's some water and, leftover plant particles in there as well. So most of what we're pooping out is bacteria. And so if you think about it like that, the more you're producing, then that means the more bacteria that you're populating in there. So that's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. And how about while we are talking, it's just popped into my head also about the issue of worms, um, because that is something also part of gut health, and so many people are not even aware, or that is something also which is never hardly ever looked into, that somebody
Mm.
could have worms, right?
Yeah, I guess like from an Australian point of view, I haven't sort of delved into the literature too much in that area, but certainly if you've got young children around in the house or pets, it's a good idea to do, a worm treatment or check for those things now and again because they are very common and, they're present everywhere in the soil or in the environment. So it is one thing that is a good idea to rule out.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we give deworming to a little Millie, our
Yeah.
dog. Every 3 months you're supposed to, or every month you're supposed to do that. But with humans, we don't do that, right? So we,
No, no, I
be-
mean, I guess you do if you've got a child and they've got symptoms, but unless that's the case, then it gets forgotten about.
yeah, yeah. I know that in India, for example, in certain parts of India, that is one of the protocols doctors do with younger children. First thing they will give is some kind of deworming, either
Mm.
herbs or medicine, because as you mentioned, kids pick up these much more than adults do. So it is in those countries where we have that kind of population where they may be more infested with worms. It is a protocol that doctors do, but here in the West we are presuming that everybody is healthy and they don't have that, but it is also part of gut health. Because are there any worms that are kind of natural to our microbiome?
I think I can't remember which one, but there was one being investigated for being able to potentially be involved with the mechanisms of celiac disease or to help prevent that. But I'm not sure
Right.
where the research ended up on that. I haven't, yeah, that's not an area where I usually delve into.
Right. Okay. So yeah, so tell me about your PhD. How long did that take?
I finished that in 3 years and 4 months to the day. Let me tell you, it was a good time to get rid of that.
I
It's
think that's
always a big deal.
fast.
Yes, I had my mum hat on, and I was like, "Let's just get this done, shall we?" So I just got it done. No, I actually looked at the long-term effect of low carbohydrate diets on the gut microbiome for my PhD, and it's
Hmm.
kind of why I'm very open-minded about diets now because I talked to a lot of people for that research study, and I had a control group that were on just a normal healthy diet, and then I had people who were on low carbohydrate diets. And, overall for long term, low carbohydrates, you know, not as associated with a healthy microbiome as people who eat more plants. But there
Yeah.
is a time and a place for using some of those tools. And
Hmm.
so I don't like it when people poo poo diets because they don't believe in it because you
Yeah.
know we know where the evidence sits, but there's also research to support the use in some instances. So let's not throw it out yet because there are some times and places when some patients do benefit from reducing the carbohydrate load.
Yeah.
In terms of microbiome though, I don't, the more plants the better, and
Hmm.
the having carbohydrates from grains and whole grains is definitely associated with better health. and
Yeah.
in particular with better cardiovascular health, and that is mediated via the gut. So we know that they're good for us. It's just a matter of individual nuances in how much we include.
Yeah. Oh, that's very interesting because I know that when I moved to the UK 26 plus years ago now, and there was like wheat free, gluten free, and I was like, what is going on here? Because we, especially all those years back, that was not something that was heard of. Even as a practitioner, I hadn't heard of that in India,
Mm.
as well as that in Ayurveda, we don't recommend wheat free diet. It's just we recommend your gut to be more healthier, which is a different take on it. It's a much deeper take on your, because your food is only as good as your gut. If your gut is impaired, then doesn't matter how good or expensive food you're putting into your gut, it is not going to go anywhere or not going to give you the effect. So but yeah, now I know that so many people who are doing gluten free and carbohydrate free, and so what's your view then on gluten free diet
I
or
think a lot of people avoid gluten, and they do because they get gut symptoms from having gluten.
yeah.
They're not necessarily intolerant of the gluten. So gluten's a protein, and that's an important point because the type of fiber that's found in wheat is got a lot of starch in it, obviously, but some of the little short fibers, the little ones, are called fructans,
Mhm.
and they fermented, or the bacteria eat those ones quite rapidly once they get to your colon, and that can cause by itself some bloating and gas and a bit of discomfort. So when people are having reactions to wheat, it might not be the gluten, it might be the other short chain
Mhm.
carbohydrates that are present in the wheat that are causing those issues, and
Yeah.
that is more along the lines of irritable bowel type symptoms.
Okay.
And we can work on that. That's not a lifelong sentence. We can, obviously we rule out celiac if it's necessary, but
Mhm.
we can work on that, and there are strategies that you can do to improve your gut health so that you can cope with eating some of those foods again. And most of the gluten-free products on the market unfortunately don't contain much fiber, which is kind of defeats the purpose, because you might reduce your symptoms from having those gluten-free products, but actually you're not feeding your microbiome at all.
Yeah.
And that's a problem too. So we don't want to go down that path. And we know that following low FODMAP diets for a long time does result in reduced diversity in the gut environment. So it is recommended as a short-term solution only. And so yes, reduce your symptoms, make yourself more comfortable, but work with a professional to try and see how we can get some of those healthful foods back into your diet.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that sounds great because that's what my view is, and of course evidence based, as well as from coming from a natural angle as well. How we should do. You can restrict maybe yourself for 3 months or something,
Mm.
reduce that, and work with someone to then add good food and strengthen your gut so that you can take those foods in smaller amounts, and slowly your gut becomes healthier and you are able to digest it.
Yeah,
uh,
that
you know,
that's the aim, isn't it? Yeah, just to get back to having a bit more of a normal diet or a healthy diet.
I think also there may be an issue about people eating too much portion size. So if you are eating a lot of food, and that load in itself can be maybe something that also triggers, in addition to that, your gut otherwise is also not healthy, right?
Yeah, and I mean the microbiome do respond pretty nicely to the food that they're given. So if you give them a large amount of food in one go, then they will respond accordingly. So if you have eaten a big meal and you do get gassy, a few hours later, then it's not surprising, because sometimes what happens is when we eat too much all at once, then we exceed the capacity of our human cells to absorb what we need, And
Yeah.
so too much goes through to the bacteria, and they just have an absolute party once they get all this extra stuff. And they might produce all this extra gas and make you feel really uncomfortable and terrible, but that was just because you ate too much.
Yes, that makes great sense. And because these are all these factors that you are now mentioning in terms of from a scientific and evidence-based point of view, and we talk about, or I talk about with my patients from natural medicine point of view, that the timing of the food, the portion
Mm,
size, how do you cook your food, all these factors are making an impact on what you are eating. So it's not even about, it may not even be about the actual food, but it's just that you are cooking it with the wrong oil can do all the damage, how that meal is then prepared.
mm.
So, looking at all those factors is so crucial. And that's why I think diet is so complex. Um, you know,
Yeah, the gut is very complex, and diet is actually just one aspect of our microbiome. And I spend a lot of time with my clients talking about. My approach is to have a 4-pillared program.
hmm,
So we don't just focus on diet. So the first is obviously around fiber, but we also talk about all the other components in food which
hmm,
can benefit or detriment your gut, like things like polyphenols and those colored compounds from berries. They're all very, very good for your gut. But then there's other things like ultra processed foods which can really be terrible for your gut. And
hmm,
then the other things that are really important to consider when we're thinking about gut health is things like lifestyle factors, because we know that just a little bit of exercise every day can improve your diversity of your gut. And that does not make sense. Like, my scientific brain does not get that. I'm like, how? We're not giving them extra food. But it does. It increases diversity if we do exercise. So that is really cool. And then
hmm,
the other thing is the social connection. The longest living communities on Earth, um, they have they have a fantastic diet, and we can't dispute that. But they also grow a lot of their food. They prepare it
hmm,
together. They sit
hmm.
together. They have meals together. They have strong family connection, and they have social connections. And those things can't be dismissed easily because they all impact the gut as well via our gut brain axis. So those are super important to remember. And it's a big picture altogether, and all of it can change our gut environment.
That's just so wonderful. But it is still, this information is still not mainstream yet.
No.
It is, I have heard it, of course, listening to all what the scientists are now discovering. And we know from natural medicine point of view, Ayurveda talks about how do you eat your food, how mindful you are, who do you eat your food with, and if you're sharing your food, that has a completely different impact, even on your gut, even on your health, your mind, as well as gut health.
Mm,
All of this. So it is amazing to realize that eventually health is holistic.
mm.
It is not just only one single factor, that uh, yeah, like the reductionist approach doesn't work for our health, what we have been doing with modern science.
No, that we have to. And as I've gotten older, and I think this comes with age, with a lot of people, as we get older, we're a bit more mellow and chilled out about thinking about those things in that way. But it
Yeah.
really is. It's a whole parcel, and unless you address all four of those pillars as part of wanting to have a bit healthier gut, it's like trying to have a table with only one leg or two legs. You haven't got the table because you haven't worked on all the legs of it. So we've got it really is, it can be some work, but it's also very enjoyable too if you do it with the right mindset.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, absolutely. And that is why, like you are supporting your patients. I'm similar, and there are so many other practitioners who are doing that, is to coach them over 3 to 6 months period of time. And I think it is so important, because I'm not personally not someone who has an emotional connection with food.
Mm.
I just find that, yeah, I empathize with people who do have it, but I don't have that. Food doesn't is not something that, you know kicks me in any way. So, and I only found out this thing when I, again, when I moved to the UK. It's like, oh my God, there are so many emotionality that is connected with the food, right? um, and I was going somewhere with this point, and I've forgotten completely what I was doing with it. Sorry. um,
But
but
it is emotional, like, and we if we treat the emotions in the right way, like, eating our meals together and enjoying that meal together, and being mindful not to be extreme or hard with ourselves on how we think about food, and thinking about, if we're on any sort of diet for any reason other than to feel good in here, then it's not the right reason. And
yeah.
if we go back to the drawing board and think about food as something to nourish us and heal us rather than punishing ourselves, then it does become a little bit easier to break that kind of cycle if there's emotional eating attached. And once you add in some feel good things like a little bit of exercise or finding something that you're enjoying, it really does start to get that gut brain axis working in a better way.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, it is. I think in terms of food, because it is also so linked with how you live your life, how you live your day as well, right? So for breakfast, you get up and you're almost on an autopilot what you normally eat for breakfast, and even just to change that habit, to add another ingredient or another food to it, it's just, I think changing or even modifying diet is so difficult, because people have got so much other connections with it, not just only nutritional connection. And that's where coaching and all of this works well. How long do you think, if you want to optimize someone's microbiome,
Hmm.
how long does it take, and what is the shortest we can do? Because I'm thinking in terms of for fertility patients, right? So
Hmm.
all fertility patients are on a wire. They don't have the time. They're
No,
like,
they want to do it yesterday, and I get that.
yes.
Yeah.
So what would you say? What's the time scale we are looking at here?
Look, we know the science tells us the microbiome can adapt very quickly. I mean, they're bacteria, so if you feed them something in a petri dish, they will go crazy and start eating it. So you can change your whole diet overnight, and the thing is, it's not going to be a comfortable experience. So that's the word of warning. It will rapidly change your microbiome, but it won't be comfortable.
Hmm.
So I usually take a more measured approach with my clients, and I have a one change philosophy. So we just do one change every week because
Right.
we need to break into that habit forming as well, and make it achievable. And after 6 weeks on one change a week, that's six changes, and that might be six extra pieces of fruit or vegetables. That's actually your whole lifestyle turned around. So, you know, don't underestimate the power of a single change. Just adding one carrot a day can make a difference to your microbiome. It might help you go to the toilet a bit better for the next week. So
Yeah.
you can do it quickly if you have the motivation and the desire to get past those initial week or two of side effects. But
Mhm.
it's probably better to do it a little bit more slowly.
Yeah. So we could say it's same between 6 to, well, 6 weeks is kind of really minimal, but about 3 months or so, like what we do with for other things in fertility, for
Yeah,
quality and stuff, and
yeah.
everything. So this can work really well with that. Even if we are making one change a week, to make 6 or 10 or 8, maximum 12 changes in over 12 weeks. I think that's quite sustainable.
It is for most people, and I think people dismiss that it's too basic, but actually what you don't want is to give someone a meal plan, and I hate meal plans for this reason. You give someone a meal plan, and they on Sunday night they prepare their meal for Monday and Tuesday, but then on Wednesday when work's been stressful and the kids are screaming at them, it goes pear shaped. They can't they
Yeah.
can't stick to it anymore. And it's because they haven't embedded all those changes in their routines, and they go back to what they were doing before because that's what they know to do. And that's just human nature, and that's not something that we should beat ourselves up about. It's just that we just tried to change too much too soon. So if you have the resources or the time to do that, then great. But let's face it, most people don't. We have the challenges of work and family or whatever else we're dealing with at home. We don't have the luxury of being able to physically or mentally cope with more than one or two things a week.
Yeah, yeah. That actually reminds me about using a lot of people who have got issues with constipation and stuff. They are using colonic irrigation.
Mm-hmm.
So how does science see it? What are your views on it? You recommend it or not, or how would you recommend it?
I think the science is pretty out on that. I would not go down that path, and I certainly wouldn't recommend it for my clients, because it it's disrupting an ecosystem. It's like cutting down the rainforest, as
Mm,
far as I'm concerned. You're messing with an ecosystem that is delicately balanced and just needs to be fed properly from the other end. So it'll flush itself out once you give it the right tools through your
yeah,
mouth, and you don't necessarily need to go down the path of irrigation at the other end.
right. Yes, because I have seen a lot of people who are doing colonic irrigation and damaging, and even the effects of it, and the fact that
Mm.
it is so expensive. So
Oh,
it's
it's very expensive, and it can, you could end up with, yeah, you can end up with some side effects or complications too, which are a little risky. So I think it's one of those things like that. It's not worth the money for what you get, and it's better just to stick to the simple things.
yeah, and also the and this is something also people are doing again for constipation is these trials that they're doing using your own poo sample to uh, put back into
Mm.
uh, in order to have good microbiome. Is that worth doing? Does that work? I mean, that just sounds really awful.
It is really cool science, and I love reading about. They're called fecal microbial transplants, and when they're in capsule form like that, we joke. Our joke is that we call them crapsules because that's basically what they are. but but it's and sometimes it can be very, very effective. So if you're in hospital and you've got some deathly gastrointestinal infection, they will give you a fecal microbial transplant, and it
Hmm,
has amazing success rates. Like it is very effective.
hmm,
The trouble is if you're doing it as a treatment for something else,
hmm.
you need to be very sure of what the donor fecal profile is, and what you're getting. Like we don't know enough about how to screen for the donors for some of these fecal microbial
You're
transplants.
having donors who are donating poop.
Yeah, yeah. There's poop donors.
That is something I hadn't heard
Yeah,
of yet.
well, you
Okay,
could look that up. You could.
okay.
I know here in Australia they've just opened a couple of biobanks for poop samples, and so it's still developing, and there's going to be changes over the years on what the appropriate screening protocols are for poop donors, because you need to not only screen the
Yeah,
bacteria in there but also be very aware of any health issues that person has,
yeah,
because it's quite possible that we also transmit that health issue to that
yeah.
new patient without realizing it. We already know that we can transmit obesity in mice by giving them, if we give non-obese mice the fecal matter from obese mice,
Yes.
they become fat. So we know that we can transfer things that are beyond our comprehension. So we need to be careful with it.
Hmm,
So it's
hmm.
not. It's something that is a kind of a last resort at this point, and not something that I would delve into without a lot of research.
Yeah, yeah. And obviously, we're talking about people who are possibly very gravely ill and not able to
Yeah,
pass schools and stuff,
yeah.
so we are looking into those. And yeah, it's okay. I will check those biobanks.
Yeah. They and
Right.
sometimes they pay actually for for healthy poop donors because
I think I can
yeah, then
certainly.
they store them in the freezer in these little capsules.
Oh my God. Okay. Yes, absolutely. But that's good to know that is more credible, because colonic irrigation is something that I don't recommend myself. And we do something different, which is ayurvedic treatment, and we do it
Mhm.
with herbs. And it is a
Yeah.
much more gentle form of enema that we give. And because it has got healing herbs in it, it has a healing effect rather than taking everything out. And I've never seen any kind of side effects, and I've done thousands of them over the years. So yeah, no, that's really good to know. And how frequently do you see kind of fertility patients, men, women? Do you see them in your practice?
I haven't had too many, but um, given that we've only just recently launched our product on the market, I'd love to have more of them because it's such an important part of the journey, and also part of having this journey is being relaxed about the diet and not being too tense about the diet and what you're eating, and that relaxed attitude about having simple food and having enough confidence with your intuition to know what to eat is so important.
Yeah.
And it can really help the whole process when you can be relaxed about that.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. No, that's hopefully you will see more patients and people with it, especially women. But it is because there is so much out there in terms of fertility foods. And yes, I also name it sometimes fertility food when I'm doing a live or something, because it's just to capture attention. But we know that there is nothing like fertility food as such. It is certain foods which are good for your nutrition,
Mm.
are going to be good for you, and the simpler you can make it, the better it is for your gut. And I like what you say, that to keep it simple and keep it relaxed, because that's the whole point of it. If the whole change is going to make you so apprehensive about it and uptight, then that's beyond the point. It's like if you're so stressed about changing your diet and foods, it just takes away the whole pleasure of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like if you tell yourself you're on some strict diet, but then you're going out for dinner with your friends and you choose not to eat because you're so anxious about it, then you're missing out on one of those table legs that I was talking about, which is the social and joy of eating with your friends and or your family and sharing food together and having a glass of wine maybe. But it's those simple pleasures that are just so critical to your not only your mental health but your gut health, and then they all work together in the end anyway. So
Yeah.
yeah, we need to be very kind to ourselves. We can have a very good balanced diet but still enjoy those social connections as well.
Yeah, yeah. So Angela, how's your family life looks like? What do you do, and what do you do daily?
Well, I'm a single mum and I have three teenage boys, so I feel the pain of parents everywhere. And my oldest is 16 and my youngest is 13. And so if we talk about food, then I could probably say I'm the expert because there's always got to be food in the pantry and in the fridge at my house because they eat like there's
They're
no
growing
tomorrow.
bulls.
Yeah, yeah, and they're all doing a lot of sport too, so they're very active.
Mm.
But I'm part of the reason that I started this business is because I love what I do and I want to share it with more people, and I also want to show my boys that you can follow your passions and have fun with your work. You don't have to, tell yourself that you have to do some job. You follow your dreams. Make it happen. And hopefully they see me not giving up and keeping on going, and hopefully that gives them the courage to do that too when they're bigger. But yeah, it is quite hectic, let me tell you, in my house.
Ah, okay, right. Yeah, I have got teenagers as well because I've got twins, a boy and a
Oh,
girl, and they are 16 as well. So
oh, yes. We're
yeah,
in the same boat then.
we are. And also during school holidays, it's like even before you bring the food, it's all gone. It's all gone, you
Yes,
know.
you think you've got some leftovers for lunch, and then you go to get it out of the fridge, and it's already been eaten.
Yeah, as well as that, I'm pretty sure yours are also because you are in the field and you know about good nutrition, and mine to eat very healthy, because that's how they've been trained, or
Hmm.
eat a lot of fruit and veggies and stuff. So that's what we go through a lot. Like my daughter was saying to me, "Mommy, we do go through a lot of fruit," because she
Yeah.
opened the fridge and it was just kind of empty-ish. And I said, "Well, that's a good thing, that you guys eat like that, because there's so many youngsters who are not eating uh,
Mm.
good fruit or good amount of vegetables, and it is heartbreaking to see how bad certain diets are. What
And
teenagers are
it's
eating.
really hard when you've got teenagers to encourage them to eat well. They're sort of at that age when they don't believe your advice anyway, and they want to do their thing. So
Yeah,
it is a bit of a battle, and you know they have to learn sometimes the hard way that
yeah.
eating those processed foods is not going to make them feel well tomorrow. And so I let
Mommy.
them go and have those. Yeah, they can work that out themselves. But I do encourage them to think about, how you're feeling today. How did you sleep after having that fast food last night? Just those
Ah,
things are important to recognise. But it is a battle. There's just ultra processed foods everywhere, and teenagers just they're just right in the appeal range for teenagers, and it's really hard to fight that battle,
mm,
especially when they're at school. So I think providing the good food at home is and not having the options at home is the best strategy, but it's very hard.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. That's one of my strategies, is not to buy certain things, at least
Mm.
not for the house. So
Yeah,
it's not in the house and you don't have a very easy access to it.
yeah.
Um, And how about your health, Angela, while you were doing PhD? I almost signed up for PhD, and also at the time when kids were 2.5, and then I had to slap myself out of it. And then, no, 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 I've already done enough studying. But
I just always wanted to do a PhD, and yeah, when the kids were little, I actually thought it was a good time because a PhD is kind of flexible work because you can do a lot of it at home, and so that is why I went down that path. But it was a really great way for me to get back into the workforce after I finished because I went straight into lecturing at uni after that.
hmm,
Um, yeah, I very much practice what I preach. I'm 47 this year, but I just ran 22 kilometers last weekend. I'm super fit, and I'm I
nice.
really try to be, kind to myself. And sometimes it's not easy when you run your own business, and I know, yeah, you understand that. But trying to give myself that self compassion to, not be too hard on myself. But I'm very conscious of being active. I don't want to be living for a long time. I want to have
Health.
um, a healthy life, not just a long life, and that's really
Yeah.
important to me.
Yeah, no, that's wonderful, and good luck with you've just started or launched, and slowly it will, of course, reach out to more people and help them even more. And it's wonderful to talk to you here today, and we will obviously do more of it. But thank you for sharing your expertise, knowledge, and definitely Pooh Bank is something I learned today. So thank you so much, Angela.
Thank you very much for the chat. It was lovely to talk.
Thank you. Great. And bye, everyone. Please check out, comment, ask a question, even otherwise afterwards, and we will try to answer your questions. Thank you for listening. Bye bye.